Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters. I'm your host, Mireille Wagner, and today on the show we have Lisa Goodkind. Lisa is a registered nutritional therapist and is also trained as a functional medicine practitioner through the Institute of Functional Medicine. She has a busy international practice called Goodkind Wellness and helps many people who are struggling with autoimmune disease and chronic and complex conditions. She has a particular expertise with rheumatoid arthritis, having reversed her own symptoms, and also supports those with many other conditions such as diabetes, chronic gut issues, neuroinflammation, and fibromyalgia. That's quite a gambit, Lisa. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Mireille.
You're welcome. So I wanted to have you on the show to talk about your particular story. I saw you in a very large group that I belong to called Rheumatoid Arthritis Healing Naturally. And it's a wonderful group with very many resources. Yeah. And you shared your own story in there. And I thought it would be great if you could share where you came from, this whole story. As far as I know, you were diagnosed only 4 years ago. Tell us a little bit about that. What led up to that diagnosis?
Yes, I mean, it's kind of a lot has happened since then, but it was really, I think I started to have, I felt a little bit out of sorts about 9 months before then. And I didn't quite know what was going on. And then about 3 months before my diagnosis, my hands started clawing in the mornings, and my fingers and wrists were hurting. And I thought maybe it was to do with the fact that I was playing too much golf and kind of gripping the club, or I was learning the piano. So I was thinking all of those things. Eventually it was getting worse by the day, because I think we're used to kind of feeling better when things aren't right. But when things start to get progressively worse, you start to sort of wonder what's wrong. And then I went to the GP, then I went to the rheumatologist. He spent about 10 minutes with me and diagnosed me with rheumatoid arthritis.
Wow, that's really quick. Did he run any blood chemistry on you to actually give you the diagnosis, or did he just diagnose you based on symptoms?
He diagnosed me clinically, and then I said, I'd really like some blood tests. And he was going away on holiday, so he just ordered the tests for me, gave me a leaflet for a drug, and that was it. And then I went to see someone else about 3 weeks after that. So yeah, that was what happened.
So what did he recommend when he diagnosed you?
Well, he recommended that I take hydroxychloroquine, which is just a drug. And then I'd previously had a secretary work for me, and she'd had rheumatoid arthritis, and she told me that she was going to end up in a wheelchair. So that was kind of what I knew about rheumatoid arthritis. And I said to him, am I going to end up in a wheelchair? And he said to me, not if you take the drugs. And that was kind of the conversation. That was the kind of fear and terror that I left that consultation with. And then the story continues, because I had about I booked another appointment with another rheumatologist. I had about 3 weeks to go until that. And I thought, in the meantime, I'm just going to see if I don't have to decide about taking drugs. I'm going to try and do everything else that I can possibly do in the next 3 weeks and just see what happens. And actually that night, I stayed up the whole night, and I went on the Facebook group that you're talking about, actually, and I found one group which was UK based, and everyone was taking the drugs and taking pictures of their swollen joints and everything. And feeling quite sorry for themselves, and they were obviously still having problems even though they were taking drugs. And then I found the site that you referred to, and everyone was trying to heal themselves naturally. And I was quite inspired. I hadn't really thought about natural healing before then, but I was quite inspired. I went through every post literally to the beginning of the group, which took me the whole night. And by the morning I had a plan, and literally I changed my diet overnight. So I did it very severely, and literally to begin with I just ate fruits and vegetables and nothing else. Not necessarily what I would advise now with the knowledge that I have, but amazingly within a short space of time, by the time I went to see the second rheumatologist 3 weeks later, my hands had unfurled, and I was beginning to feel a lot better.
That's just 2 weeks.
that was in 3 weeks.
3 weeks,
Started to
incredible.
make
Yeah.
a difference.
Yeah.
And so I relayed that to the rheumatologist. He said I should still take the drugs.
Wow. Yeah.
But by that time, I'd kind of made up my decision. And that was really the beginning of my journey into functional medicine, nutritional therapy, and just the amazing things that you can do with diet. And just, if you really want to improve yourself, it's certainly very possible. I know, because I've done it, and now I'm helping lots of other people do the same.
You mentioned quite a few points that I find are really important to highlight, and that's when people get that very first diagnosis, right? And obviously there are lots of questions, and most people are told, and I'm thinking, by their doctors, that this is incurable. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
So what is your advice to people who are newly diagnosed? What do you feel that their first steps should be?
I was really surprised at the time, because you're kind of used to listening to what doctors tell you, and if they say it's incurable, you believe them. Why shouldn't you? And it's almost as though you hit a brick wall. And in my case, I kind of pushed against the brick wall, and there was this magic door, and there were all these other things. So I think I now believe that anything is possible within reason, and especially if you catch something early on. So I think it's worth. I'm not saying that you shouldn't follow what the doctors say, or I'm not saying definitely don't take the drugs. I personally, I wouldn't, but it's not for me to advocate what others should do. But I would definitely say, that everyone should really explore everything that they possibly can. So there's so many things that you can do. Everything. To begin with, I taught myself, and I discovered all these things myself. So there are lots of things that you can do with diet. So most people that I come across have some kind of trigger. So different triggers can come from foods, or they can come from infections. And I think the thing to do is, no one gets ill overnight. You don't get an autoimmune condition overnight, and you don't get chronic condition overnight. There's always something that triggered it. When I'm talking to my clients, I take a case history, and I go back to the very beginning of time, even back to the time that, where they breastfed or not. But in most cases, you can find something that happened, that the point at which someone started to feel unwell. And looking at the timeline through functional medicine is incredibly powerful, because that gives you your clue there and then as to what the cause might be. So just scrolling back through things that have happened, whether they be stress, whether it be food poisoning that you had. In my case, one of my triggers, when I had metal dental braces fitted, and that was a moment at which I noticed my health change, and now I understand that could have contributed to it. It wasn't the only thing, but actually, even as non-practitioners and not working with a practitioner, anyone can go back through their history and try and think about when did I last feel well, and what might my trigger be. And there's a lot that you can do yourself. Personally, I think in most cases, going the extra step and having a practitioner help you makes a big difference as well, and saves time. So I was able to use diet, and I did lots of other things as well. There are some things in the end, I was probably about 90% better. I still had the odd symptom, and I did speak to a practitioner. And through her, I discovered there were a couple of things going on with my liver, which I never would have worked out for myself. So I think having a practitioner on board and doing testing and things like that is helpful, but definitely there's a lot that everyone can be doing to help themselves.
Yeah, you've answered like all of my questions, because I love that you that's okay. No, I love that you highlighted the timeline, and I was going to ask you what was your particular trigger, and because you said it was like 9 months before that you felt out of sorts.
Yes.
How many months or so was that? Was the dental braces before your diagnosis?
Probably a few months before. Yeah. And in my case, my gums was swelling.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like my tongue didn't fit in my mouth anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt really, really thirsty. And I kept asking the dentist, and he's saying, you know, you could do better with your hygiene. But actually, my gums were so inflamed. Now, if I saw someone with a mouth like that, I'd say, you know, looks like you've got some kind of intolerance to metal. And I had those braces for you know, 3 years or so, and didn't, you know, it's now what I know that was a trigger. Perhaps it liberated some mercury that had been in my fillings, or perhaps there's quite a close association between the bacteria gingivalis, and which comes from the gums, and rheumatoid arthritis. So that may also have been a factor.
Yeah, there's actually Klebsiella, which is also very much in the mouth, which is indicated in RA as well.
Yeah.
And dental hygiene is such an underestimated part of our whole body health. So everybody's looking for all of the other labs, etc., not thinking about dental hygiene and fillings. So yours was a case of having had amalgam fillings in your mouth, as well as having another metal, which was the braces. Is that correct?
It was definitely the braces was the amalgams I'd had for years, but it's possible that just moving my teeth around had changed that. But that, I mean, I was someone that was never ill. I never had colds. I never had flu. And for you know, maybe once every 5 years I'd get a small sniffle or something. And again, now I understand that that's not necessarily such a good thing to never be unwell, because your body is detoxing. You know, if you have a cold every year, that's the body's way of detoxing germs or things that actually should come out of your body, because it's the being unwell that's the getting better. We don't really look at it like that. So you know, if someone said to me, I don't understand, I've never been ill, I've never had anything, that can be a sign that the immune system has not actually been working. And then in my case, you know, I'd had hepatitis and dysentery when I was in my 20s, which was quite a long time ago. And I think those were triggers, and those were things that were there. I'd had glandular fever when I was young as well. And those things that happened when I was 13, when I was 20, although they were such a long time ago, they had an impact, and they were there. And I think they contributed to kind of what happened later on.
Now, when people talk about autoimmune, at least also in the functional medicine circles, we talk about an emotional link as well, or stress-related, traumatic perhaps. Did you have anything like that in your own particular history that could have also added another layer to it?
I don't think in my case I had a particularly high stress load, but as part of my getting better, and I think, you know, it's part of the functional medicine toolbox, as it were. It's important to look at every aspect of your life. So, you know, I for example, I had a relationship with a close family member, which was not it wasn't a particularly healthy relationship. There was some baggage there. And as part of my healing process, I addressed that, and I addressed anything that I was carrying. I addressed, and I did some self-development to be at peace with everything, because I think that's part of it. And many of the clients that I see do have issues with stress. And again, if there are people that have been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease or anything, it's always beneficial to manage that stress with meditation or breathing exercises. Probably most people that I see, I try to give them some methodology for dealing with stress if that's an issue, and even if it's not.
So take us a little bit through what you did, because you had an incredibly fast journey. I mean, you were only diagnosed 4 years ago, and I'm assuming before those 4 years you knew nothing about functional medicine, and now you're helping people with incredibly complex cases and autoimmune disease. So you've reversed your own, you've been studying functional medicine, and you're now taking your studies deeper with the Karazian Institute. So tell us, through your journey, exactly what kind of diet changes you made that really helped you, and that last 10%, what were those for you? Because I know for everybody it's different. What were those little last things? Because as far as I'm aware, you are in remission and you have no symptoms at all.
No, I don't have, I haven't got one symptom.
Wow, that's fabulous. Okay, so let's help educate everyone that's listening. First steps.
So I would say kind of the steps that I did are slightly different from what I would do now, because obviously I've done all this training, and to begin with, it was self-taught. But I think certainly addressing the diet, and there's kind of two aspects to it. So there's what shouldn't you eat and what should you eat, and not everyone thinks about both aspects of those. But what shouldn't you eat? I would say that gluten is by far the most toxic thing that people can eat, and something that can easily have a negative impact on health. So it can have an impact on the gut. So many people are intolerant to gluten that I would almost say, just take that out and see if it helps. Even if you weren't previously aware that you had some kind of issue, I would definitely say to eliminate that. And there's lots of testing you can do. So when it comes to diet, you can either do an elimination diet, which they call the gold standard, and then it's up to you how deeply you go with that. So you can eliminate just a handful of foods, or you can go for something like the autoimmune paleo diet,
which is really quite a few eliminations.
Which is quite a few eliminations, and what that's doing is taking out most of the things that many that are encompassed in all of the intolerances that someone may or may not have. Yeah. So it's quite severe, but that includes glutens, grains, lectins, which are often seeds and nuts. It's a protein portion of food. Sometimes eggs, dairy, those are the things. But I would say the first thing to do is to find an elimination diet somewhere along the spectrum. So you could just eliminate gluten and dairy and wheat, sugar, alcohol, things like that. Corn and soy are also foods that people can be reactive to, shellfish, shrimp, or go for something like the autoimmune paleo diet. And then you want to include things that are beneficial to the diet. So obviously take out the processed foods and things that most of us know are not good for us. And then it's important to try and include things, polyphenols and things which act as antioxidants. So in simple terms, if you want to have lots of fruit and vegetables, if you pick the brightest colors that you can. And I found that actually, instead of shopping on Ocado, which I normally do, if I went into a fruit and vegetable shop or stall and I looked, and the things that attracted me, you see the bright colors, and you somehow get attracted to the things that are beneficial to you. So I really tried to include a lot of bright, deep colors, lots of reds and purples. I had a lot of blueberries at the time, but a variety of colors is really helpful. So those are the kind of things take out and put in. I think is the best thing that you can do with diet.
Yeah, wonderful. So is the diet change what brought you 90% of the way? Was it that significant for you?
It wasn't just diet. So I took a lot of supplements. So the other thing you can do is food intolerance tests. So you can find out foods specifically that you're intolerant to, and so I did, and I removed those from my diet. I did tests I did gut tests, so I saw what my gut bacteria was. I worked on my digestion, so I took supplements to improve. My stomach acid was low, so I took things to improve that, enzymes to improve my digestion. So everything to kind of help me digest food. And then I went through processes of detoxification, using smoothies and different compounds as well. So that was about pulling out things. I did some testing and saw that I was intolerant to quite a few chemicals. So I basically became completely organic, and that went from the food I ate to not wearing nail varnish anymore, the products that I used, all the makeup that I used. So what I wanted to do was take the pressure off my system, let my body detox the things it has to by not adding on extra things on top of that. And as I said, I did some self-development. I tested and I saw, I did things to support my liver so I took some supplements to support my liver. And that was really the kind of last 10% where I needed a little bit of help. Was the last symptom I had was just pain in my hands at night. So I was fine the whole of the time, but I went to bed and I woke up with some pain in my hands, and that was the only residual thing that we have. And I think the reason some people wake up with pain, they're kind of okay, and it was worse when I slept better. Then I'd wake up with more more pain. Because I think the body, the immune system is more active at night. So when you're not busy doing things, not working your brain, your body's not having to digest anything, that's when the body can focus on the immune system and trying to sort out anything that's there. And inflammation is part of the immune system. So it's not unusual that people wake up with more discomfort because that immune system has been kicking in overnight. So I did things to support my immune system. So
that's a hell of a lot for people to deal with. So obviously when they start, everybody moves at a slightly different pace, and for some people they can do that elimination diet, and some people have to take a little bit slower and start only with gluten and dairy, and then add if they're not getting better. But as you mentioned, the gut healing part and the working on digestion, that's a large part of what you and I do with clients, because you can be eating the best diet out there and not bringing on the nutrients, right?
No, I agree. And I think clean living is an easy enough thing to do. Change, not putting cling film on things, I don't use aluminium foil. I don't drink out of plastic water bottles. So just, cleaning up your whole lifestyle. I think, trying not to have processed foods and things like that, trying to cook healthy. All of those things I think can help and make a difference.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that whole part of unburdening the body and bringing in as little toxins as possible. So looking all through your environment to take those out. So I'm guessing that a lot of people are thinking like, so Lisa, when can I start going back to normal? When can I eat gluten and dairy again? What do you say to your clients?
I think, some of the problems that people have occur because they develop a leaky gut. So they develop a permeable intestine. That can happen if you've got infections, if you've got too much stress, if you smoke, if you're eating foods that you're intolerant to. And then what happens is that if you've got a leaky gut, food proteins that shouldn't be getting through, get through, and then you can develop antibodies to those and you start to feel not very well. So one of the objectives is to take out the problem foods that are causing the gut to be leaky. You can get nutrients to help you seal up the gut, and generally antibodies last for about 5 months. So if you can go for a period of time, and I think the thing about elimination, it's not necessarily about eliminating everything forever. So if you do the food intolerance test, it gives you a good steer. And there may be foods that you don't know, you just wouldn't think of testing for.
Completely healthy foods too, right?
Yes. So for example, I was fine and I went to the States to a conference, and I developed a real pain in the back of my calves, just in the back of my calves, and it was kind of getting worse every day. And then I did carry around my food intolerance list because I wasn't eliminating absolutely everything.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the foods was chia seeds. And the chef at the hotel,
yeah.
which you wouldn't think of eliminating,
Mm-hmm.
the chef at the hotel was chucking chia seeds into everything. So I was having a chia seed pudding for breakfast, and then salad had chia seeds. And I realized that that was making the difference. So the next couple of days, I didn't have chia seeds in anything.
Okay.
And that pain at the back of my calves went. So
amazing. Yeah.
it was really interesting because the test helped me to identify that. And what was interesting, it was affecting a specific part of my body, because oftentimes a food protein may have a similar sequence to a part of the body. So gluten has a similar sequence to the thyroid gland.
People that Hashimoto's is
yeah,
so
people
common.
that have Hashimoto's shouldn't eat gluten because it can contribute to the destruction. So I was interested in the direct correlation, which I wouldn't have worked out. So it's also worth just being really mindful and keeping track of foods that you react to. So if you feel worse one day, then just think about what you've eaten and just try and build up that awareness. But with an elimination diet, the idea is that you then start, having taken all the foods out, you reintroduce them and you look for reactions. And if you introduce one food and then leave it 2 or 3 days before reintroducing the next, and that way you can identify which are the problem foods.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Yeah, absolutely. The whole reintroduction protocol. So tell me, so once you've helped, or say a client comes to you and they have done the full elimination diet, they've eliminated their food intolerances that they know of, and they have been rebuilding the gut with you, but they're still experiencing some symptoms. What kind of line do you go down with that particular person to help them discover what else there might be out there?
So I wouldn't necessarily start with the gut with everyone. So I take a very, very detailed case history, and then I look at where the areas of dysregularity are. So sometimes I might pull on different strings. It might be that someone's got blood sugar dysregulation and insulin resistance, in which case I would get them to try and balance their blood sugar, and we look at more of a blood sugar balancing diet. So but the other thing, diet isn't everything. So diet is one of the things that can cause, and it's kind of the lowest hanging fruit that we can all kind of have that awareness of. But that you could have infections. So again, if someone's had food poisoning, or they've been on holiday and been unwell, then I think that those are clues that maybe there's something there. You have bacterial infections, viral infections. You can have intolerances to chemicals, and you can test for all these things. You might have parasites in the gut. So again, that's something that you test for. You could have toxicity. You can have lots of electromagnetic pollution at home. So again, that's another thing to mention that people can do for themselves is, don't sleep with your mobile phone switched on right next to your bed. Just try and take any electronic devices. Don't have anything near you at night. Try and limit your exposure to Wi-Fi, and just generally try and be clean electronically. Which is also a way to help yourself. So that there's different. It's mostly the same kind of things that can impact health, be it one autoimmune disease or another.
So how long are you seeing that resolution generally takes for most people? How long did it take you from starting? We understand that you were self-therapeuting.
Self-experimenting.
Exactly. Self-experimenting, and yours took longer. But working with a practitioner, how long should people kind of expect to be working with a practitioner?
I always start people off usually on a 12-week program. And within that time, I think you can really break the back of it and start to see improvements. If someone's had something for years and years, it's unlikely that you're going to cure something in 12 weeks. But it probably took me about a year before I was clear of symptoms. Again, I took the slow path because there was a lot of experimentation. But I think, you know, on average, maybe 6 months, you can make huge improvements and, you know, maybe go towards resolving something completely. But I tend to see people in kind of 3 month batches. So we'll take it as far as we can for 3 months, and then sometimes add another 3 months on. Or if I think it's really a long haul type of thing, it might be a 6 month program that we work on.
Yeah, brilliant. So you consider yourself a very positive person, and you know, you come across as a very positive and outgoing kind of person. What would you say to people that that have been struggling for a long time, and what is one message you would like to give to somebody who's struggling?
I just think that anything is possible. I think don't be downtrodden by what you're told that what you have is incurable. The thing that I really don't like is when they say about autoimmune that your body is attacking itself. I think that's the worst kind of mental picture that anyone can have. Your immune system is always working to try and get you better. You know, we've survived maybe 300,000 years because our ancestors had the immune system that kept them alive and we could be born. So the immune system is incredibly powerful, and you know, I would trust in that. If you do the right things, really anything is possible. So I wouldn't give up hope. I would, you know, I think to me the biggest thing that I did was to believe. I was convinced from day one. I decided I was going to get better and cure myself. And now I don't necessarily think you can cure autoimmune, or maybe you need a Nobel Prize if you can. But I think, you know, there are definitely ways. I wouldn't want to give people false hope, but I think everyone should really, if you do everything you can possibly do, I think you can make massive changes, and miracles can happen, and anything's possible. So I think just try and have a positive outlook, and it's hugely empowering when you do kind of start to get yourself better. And doctors they don't always necessarily know the right way. And I think, you know, some of the autoimmune medication, it suppresses symptoms and it can make you feel better, but it doesn't get rid of the ultimate cause. And that's why functional medicine, I think, is really powerful, because you're looking at causes. And if you go back to those causes, it is possible to unwind them, to reverse them, and to go towards, you know, go some or all of the way to restoring health.
Yeah, that's so key. And it's a wonderful message, I think, for everybody, is that positive mindset as well. Belief in the therapy you're choosing is working as well. And absolutely, functional medicine is getting to the root cause, not just covering symptoms.
No, absolutely.
Trying to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for your time. It was incredible lesson for a lot of people. I think I hope there are lots of takeaways that people could get out of this interview and get started on their own journey. But if they would like to have some guidance and support from you directly, how can they get in touch with you?
They can visit my website, which is goodkindwellness.com, or they can Google, if you Google Lisa Goodkind, I should come up on the first page.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
It's such a great name to have in this industry. Very good karma.
Yeah, thank my husband, because it's his name first.
Perfect. Well, it was lovely chatting to you. Thank you so much.
Hey, lovely chatting to you as well. Thanks for the opportunity.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.